Good, a big warm welcome for Georgina Hart.
Thank you, and good afternoon everyone, and thank you for coming to listen to my art journey. I thought I might start today and just tell you a little bit about my background and how I came to get into the art world. So I was born and raised in Adelaide, and from a very early age I started showing an interest in art. Certainly throughout my schooling, any sort of spare moment or hour, people would find me in the art room, sort of creating and experimenting with techniques. And I had a very close relationship with my art teacher at school, so she guided me all the way through to year 12. And my parents sent me during holidays to art classes as well, so I really nurtured that side of my creativity. Once I left school, I went on and studied commercial and fine art for 3 years until I decided I wanted to take a different avenue in my career, and I decided to do nursing. And went off and did enrolled nursing and a further couple more years in nursing, and then wanted another change and moved into hospitality. And I stayed there in hospitality until 2002. I was working for Ansett and I was kitchen manager running the kitchens in the terminals. And when Ansett folded, I no longer had a job. My kids were 10 and 11 at the time, and I sort of wondered what I might do, and I had a birthday a couple months after I lost my job at Ansett, and my husband gave me for my birthday 5 tubes of Matisse paint, 3 brushes, and he stretched a canvas for me.
Did you just go and buy the Matisse from a shop?
He did, and he went in and asked for some advice.
Oh, good.
Yeah, what are the best colours to buy for someone that has not done a lot of painting? Because certainly throughout my schooling days, I did a lot of printmaking, drawing, ceramics, but very little painting. So I had very, actually no experience with painting at all. And really at art school, we didn't do a lot of painting either. So with my first piece of art is this one here up on the screen. And this is what I created. This was inspired by Matisse, my favourite artist, and I found this pic in a magazine, and I really had very little idea of what I was doing, except I put down a Matisse background colour, the heritage red, and just played around with a few different colours and left some of the canvas raw, and this is what I produced and hung it in my home. But what did happen was that I got a bit itchy to want to continue to paint. So I decided maybe I would do one morning a week at the Willoughby Workshop Centre, and had a teacher, Sarah Aylward, who was pretty strict on us but amazing in that she taught me all about colour mixing and about the process of painting. So I then spent a couple of years going to the class every Tuesday morning and started concentrating on still life and flowers and ocean, and started producing some, what I thought at the time was some great work, and people were telling me it really, you've got a bit of a skill, so maybe you should do something with your art. And I was loving it, and I was finding that, whilst the kids were at school, I was really concentrating on painting and what I could produce. So I would go out to the beach and take some photos and then come back and paint it. So very soon I sort of got pretty hooked, and decided what I should do is perhaps try and exhibit and sell some of these works. Like this particular one was about 1.5 metres long, and it was inspired someone gave me a book on oceans, and I sort of really painted from the book, and started exhibiting in these local school shows, and my work started to sell. And this was a friend's daughter, and I painted her and gave it to my friend for his 40th birthday. So this was Port Wollonga Jetty in South Australia, and people were, providing some really positive feedback that I thought, well, maybe I can do something with my art and turn it into a bit of a career. We had an exhibition in a friend's home. There was 5 artists, and between us we put in about 5 or 6 works each, and everything sold. So, I was pretty excited at the time and thought, well, if I want to take it to the next step and perhaps not paint from a photo, I really need to develop a style of my own. And this is just again from some photos. So this picture here is really thinking about developing a bit of a style. I had just recently been on a holiday with my parents in Broome and very inspired by the colours, and came back to, I was working from home from my kitchen and started producing some works inspired from my recent visit. But thought maybe I should experiment with figures as well, as opposed to just the landscape and the birds. So I was always scared of drawing or painting people, but I thought I should plunge into the deep end and give it a go. So I started putting figures into my work, very simple, stylised ones, and people really liked what I was doing. So I started trying to develop my figures and just had a bit of fun with them for a while. And they were selling for around, large canvases for around $600-700. And then in 2006, I asked our local cafe that had just opened up whether I could exhibit some work on their walls. And it was a cafe called Martha's in Castle Crag. And this is the cafe here. And some of the works that you see in this photo here are actually from an exhibition I had with them a couple of years later. But this was the space, and one of the owners was a florist. So, there was some beautiful flowers and art on the wall. And whilst I was there, I had 3 huge paintings hanging on that wall, and that's one. It's another one, and then this one. They were all about 1.5 metres by 1.5 metres, or slightly bigger, retailing for about $1,200 each, and they were spotted by a curator at the Wentworth Galleries in the city. And within 24 hours, my work was pulled out of Martha's and put into the Wentworth Galleries. And then they started talking about, within a couple of weeks, a solo exhibition. And my prices went from $1,200 to, $2,500 for these huge works, or even a bit more. So I put together a body of work for a solo exhibition, and at the same time, I really spent quite a bit of time on developing a decent website. My husband had been running a website for me for a couple of years, but thought now was the time to invest. And I got a professional artist who does website design to design it for me. And so you can see my figures are still fairly naive at this point in time, some with faces, some without. But all these works, most of the works sold at the solo exhibition that I had with the Wentworth Galleries. And I then started doing Art Sydney and Art Melbourne and putting my work into those shows, and I started getting spotted by galleries interstate. And within 12 months, I was having exhibitions in Queensland at the David Hart Galleries. David Hart Gallery is the son of Pro Hart, and we have the same surname, but we're not related. And to this day, I'm still represented by them up in Queensland, and it's the biggest asked question in their gallery, is Georgina related to Pro? But I'm not. And then Art Images in Adelaide, South Yarra Art House in Melbourne, Manyang Gallery in the Peninsula in Melbourne. So Gallery 307 in Sydney, in Northbridge, and I'm still working from home and out of my kitchen. My kids would come home from school and there was paint from one end of the house to the other. So it was just taking over our lives. Fortunately, we'd put in a bit of an industrial sized kitchen and had stainless steel benches. So it was, a great area to work from, but it was taking over our whole life. So within sort of a period of 12 months, I was painting like a mad thing for all these exhibitions. And the top one here on this screen was Art Images in Adelaide, and I had 25 works in that and sold probably 22 of them within a couple of days of it opening. That was Art Melbourne that I did in 2007, and then the gallery up in the Barossa Valley in South Australia wanted me to exhibit with a group exhibition. It's Manyang, and then I started getting a lot of editorial from North Shore Times and Mossman Daily. They were approaching me and wanting, know a bit more about my story. So I did, this is still painting from home. David Hart Galleries. Yes, so this all happened very, very quickly. So some of these next pictures are just sort of figures that I started to develop from small figures into large figures. And I sort of thought I would introduce a bit of a love theme, happiness into my paintings, and a bit quirky as well. Some of them get quite quirky. But, I would put them out into galleries and they would sell really quickly. So, yeah, and then I thought, well, if, my young love adults are selling them, maybe I should concentrate on getting into children. And just getting to this image here, at the time I was approached by some politicians in Parliament House, and they asked for one of my paintings to hang in Parliament House in Canberra. And then this is really the first of my children's series with the big figures, and I called it my Dancing Girl series and put it out into all the galleries, and they sold 120 centimetres square, so they were big, really big.
4 foot by 4 foot.
About. Is that right?
You're talking to someone who works in feet and inches.
Right. Yeah, no, they were 120 centimetres square. Okay. Yeah. And this image here with the love hugging girl running into the boy's arms became very popular, and I became known for my Dancing Girl series and this image here that's developed over the years. That's probably a couple of years old, that painting there. And then, of course, I started getting approached by all sorts of charities, and they were wanting my work to be in their grand auctions, and I've always supported the Humpty Dumpty Foundation. And it's fairly close to my heart, so that was in about 2008, I think. I started working with them, and they would auction them off, and depending on the painting, each year you'd get anything between sort of 6,000 and 7,000 to 12,000. Then my children's schools were asking for donations as well. My daughter was a rower, and so every year I would donate a painting which had rowers in it, and we would auction it off to raise money for the school. So I did that for about 4 years in a row. I still do the Humpty Dumpty Foundation along with a couple others. And again, this is a Humpty one. This is about 2 weeks ago. Bob Baldwin auctioned it off at a fundraiser up in Port Stephens, one of my ocean ones, and got some very good money for it. So, yeah. And then in 2009, I thought I needed to move out of home and needed to find a space that was close to home where I could walk to, and came across this shop next to Kiss Me Cake. Kiss Me Cake had been going for about 3 years, and it was the shop itself was very dingy and it needed a lot of work, but I walked in there and knew straight away that it was the right space for me. And it was quite a large commitment because I suddenly then had to think about paying quite a lot of rent per month, but thought I will take the plunge and give it a go. So I opened next to Kiss Me Cake, and I've got a picture of what they do, but they specialise... very dangerous.
Yes.
And in fact, 18 months into my lease, we knocked a big hole between the two shops, and now people use my gallery space and sit in and have coffee and cake and can look at, yeah. So this was, when I first opened up, a very tidy studio, which doesn't look like that now, but that's my studio space, and you can see through that I've got a lovely garden where I can paint outside if I want to. So this is an example of the cakes at Kiss Me Cake. You can see that they're almost like a piece of art in themselves. They're individual cakes. Yeah. So we work really well together as a team, and we do a lot of stuff together. Now, not such a great photo, but that's just an example of how it looks these days. It looks a bit tidy in this next one that you'll see, but I think I must have tidied it up for this picture. But I have lots of inspiration around my walls, and as you can see, a lot of Matisse paint sitting there, and a glass cabinet, so it's on display, yeah. Yeah, that's just another one of the studio. And that's the door that leads from my studio out into my little gallery space where you can see some tables and chairs sitting. And my garden where I can paint, absolutely beautiful to paint in.
Whereabouts is this?
Middle Cove on Eastern Valley Way, so really busy strip and fantastic exposure. Yeah, so once I had this new retail space, I thought, well, you know, there's many possibilities. I can maybe look at selling some prints. So I developed a range of, and I have developed over the last 12 years, a range of about 15 images, so paintings that I thought might do well as limited editions. I have them photographed professionally, and then they can be printed onto fine art paper or onto canvas. And they can be printed at any size you like, from small there right up to, you know, 1.5 metres long. And this has become a separate arm of my business, is my limited editions. They're limited to 35 in the edition, and they do very, very well. And this is just an example of some of the images that we have as limited editions. This particular image under the frangipani tree, it's been very, very popular, and I've nearly sold that edition. And then a couple of years ago I was approached by a wine company called Hesketh Wines based in South Australia, and they asked if they could start buying my artwork to use on their wine labels. And as you can probably see on the bottle that's sitting in the ice bucket there, there is an image of the painting sitting on the label, so that's how we do it. And probably for 3 years now, they've bought about 6 different paintings of which they use on their new range of wines. That's my most recent one that I did only a couple of months ago for them. And there's the wines. You can see one of the wine bottles has a rowing one on it. It's because my daughter's school decided to actually, have a range of wines and use some of my artwork as well. So. And then, of course, because I had taken on a commercial space, I thought, well, to supplement the income and pay the rent, I probably should start running workshops. So from the 2009, 2010, I started running the workshops, limiting to 4 students per workshop, and really concentrate on sort of students, but encourage them to paint something in my style, because essentially I'm not an art teacher, but I know a lot about what I do and could show them process and different skills on how to produce something. And generally people would paint their children.
So are they just one-day workshops?
They're one day. They start at 10 in the morning and go through till 3 in the afternoon. Sadly, I don't do a lot anymore because I'm too busy with other work, but people absolutely love them, and they walk in with a blank canvas and walk out with a painting to hang on the wall. And people.
Days do you have then?
Well, maybe twice a year. So people, maybe 3 times a year. It just depends. What I do now is try and encourage people to get a group of 4 people together, and then you come to me and say, we can do these days, we can do a Saturday or we can do a Monday, and I'll try and work around what you can do. And generally leading up to Christmas, it's pretty hard for me to do, but these guys just got a group of friends together and put on a bit of wine and cheese or a bit of coffee and cake, and we have a really good time. So, and I encourage people to use my paints as well, so that they can get the beautiful colours that they need. Yeah.
Have you ever worked with other mediums?
In oils?
Yes.
I have dabbled in them, but very quickly went back to no. I mean, certainly in my art school days, but not since I've been.
Because your work looks like it could lend itself very nicely to pastels.
Look, I have experimented a little bit with it, but not a lot. Even combining the paint, the acrylic and the pastels together, but it wasn't so successful for me. But
Over the acrylic, treat the paper with canvas.
Yeah.
Your acrylics, and then work pastel over that.
Yes, but I would, open to experimenting with a lot of things. I've also, I get approached all the time by HSC students who are wanting to perhaps do, use my art as, as for a major, or even like this little girl here. She was in year 3 at Middle Cove Public School, and she emailed me and said, would it be okay if I came to her home and did a painting with her for a project she had. So I try and do as much as that as I can to help the kids. Recently, an HSC student just did use my gallery and built sort of models of exhibitions and so forth. So I worked very closely with her in the last 12 months. And then this is quite interesting, this one here, a girl who was looking after my dog Harry, who features in this painting. She was wanting to commission me to do a painting of all her dogs that she looks after, and she runs a business called Boutique Pet Retreat in Seaforth, and she was keen to use this as a logo for her business, and so we went about doing a commission, and then came up with the idea that it would be very nice to wrap the painting around the entire car. So it was then turned into a big vinyl sticker, and there's my Harry sitting in the front seat there with Harry underneath, yeah. And that's Rachel on the side of the car. And that drives past my studio nearly every day, and she always waves at me. But it came up beautifully, yeah. And she now has a number plate that's got Wolf on it, yeah. And then, you know, I get approached from people to do all sorts of things. This is a health food shop down in Sutherland, and they asked me to decorate their window, which I did. So I used her logo, and I just put one of my little figures into it, which is, you can see a little girl hanging from swing under the tree there. So that was a bit of fun. And in fact, I'm going to Adelaide on the 20th of October to do one for a travel agency. So just adds, it's just another photo of girls in the garden after they painted with me. And then because, you know, I have this retail space in Middle Cove, I decided I might do a bit of painting of furniture as well, and started doing a little range of chairs for a bit of fun. And they've all sold very nicely as well.
Are you doing that on the inside?
That was actually on the outside, but it was in an arcade.
Okay,
Yeah. And there's a bench I've done last week, which is just an extra area for people to sit in the gallery when they're having their coffee and cake.
What about the scatter cushions? Are those hand painted?
No, that would be nice. No, I found those in IKEA. I thought they were quite good. Yeah, and I don't know if you can see it on the wall at the very back. There's a old pedal car that I picked up from the side of the road. It's red, in fact, it doesn't show it very well, but that's now suspended off my wall in the gallery. So I try and have some different interesting things for people to look at, as well as my artwork. The painting on the easel there was purchased last weekend for a 21st birthday present. So that's the bow. It was about to walk out the door, but I was more focused on my bench that I'd just painted, and I was excited about that. I've recently...
That's strange the way the photograph has been taken with the painting on the wall with that aura behind it. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I think that was, must have been the flash, I think. Yeah. I was taking it at night after I'd...
That just looks good.
Yeah. I put this one up on Facebook because my business Facebook is a very good tool for my business, and I always put new works up and have, you know, about 3,500 followers, so it's a very good platform. Recently got into Instagram as well, and that's just more of a fun social media to use, but post every day and put, you know, something up that I've painted over the years. And then this other side of my business is my commissions, which these days, besides keeping stock up in galleries, a lot of my time is commission work, and I think I'm lucky because people can look at my paintings. I've captured that sort of niche in the market where they can see their children in it, and they want their children painted in their settings all the time. So currently, you know, I've got a wait list of about 6 months for a commission, and I paint just about 6 days a week. So it's a very... It certainly does. Yes, my family whinge, but but it's been a very good. So there's just some examples of commissions. This is a family that have no children but have lots of animals instead, and they wanted my style painting with their animals sitting on the branch. A lot of people like to have their children painted on the beach, and probably 30% of my commission work is beach-based with their dog.
So you don't take photographs?
No, they often will send me photos of their children, and it's really, the process is just really a representation of as opposed to a portrait. So I'm certainly flexible with their clothing, hair colouring, I match as closely as I can, and they get to choose, what sort of setting and colours and that they like. This one, it was a huge one, about 160 centimetres square, that I finished about a month ago, that was commissioned from a family in Singapore. So this next commission was commissioned by a lady whose husband was about to turn 40, and she was very keen to put something in the painting that he absolutely loved, which was his red Ferrari. And this was only a small one and just a bit of fun, but I've been asked to do a few sort of small quirky ones like this. And the next, this commission that's up here now, this family actually asked me to do 2 paintings. One was back on of their children. This was quite a large piece, 1 metre square. And then they asked me to do a small one that sat next to the large painting, which is about 40 centimetres. And that was showing the children, again, just a representation of them, but front on. So that was a bit of fun and a bit different. This family here spent a few years living in Australia and were heading back to the UK to live, and were wanting to take something that reminded them of Australia. So we worked with the outback colours and the Australian animals. And then just a couple of paintings that I've recently done, slightly different style, moving into using some sprays and getting sort of the 3D effect, which has actually been received really nicely, and people absolutely love this style. And there's another one there. This family here live in country New South Wales, and were very keen to have something that reminded them of the children at their age now, their favourite jacaranda tree and their horse, their pony that they spend hours and hours on, and both the girls dress up the whole time. So that was a sort of a representation of this time in their lives. Again, another commission, 2 little boys who spend all their time on the beach, and another family who go skiing every year and were wanting to capture their little girl in the snow. Again, another commission, family of 4. This particular work is one that I did for an art show, and was very popular, and I've since had prints made of it. It's called Rosie's Roses, and I really enjoyed painting that, so had it turned into a print. This one, again, a commission from a family in the country, sitting on their tree with kookaburras, and another one at the beach. Started to move in and do a few more beach scenes, but introducing the reeds in the foreground, and have been very, very popular. This family here lived in Australia for quite a few years. The kids used to play on the Hills Hoist in the back garden, and wanted to take a piece. They moved back to New Zealand and were wanting to take a piece with them that had their Hills Hoist in it. So that was a bit of fun to do. And so I continue to do Art Sydney, Art Melbourne when I can. And last year when I was involved in it, I actually got approached by the company that managed the art on board of all the cruise ships, and they saw my limited edition print range out at the art show. It's my daughter sitting there, and decided that they were wanting to take on 21 images with about 400 in each edition, and see how it goes. And it's actually been received really well and selling very nicely. That I'm now working with them for a couple of cruise ships, Royal Caribbean, that's about to sail next month, and we've got a further 8 images. So that's been really very good for the business. And now I just want to share with you a experience I had in June of this year. I decided for a special birthday to take myself off to Portugal and join an art school for a week and paint in a beautiful little town called Oliao, a small fishing village right down the south of Portugal. And there was 9 of us that came together from all over the world. The tutor actually was from New South Wales, but I didn't know her. And we lived in this art house and painted in this town for a week, and it was pretty amazing. And in fact, I was so inspired that you will see my style has changed just a little bit from my week away. Beautiful colours, and you can see that I then introduced, still with my figures, the the colours, the new colours, and the washes in the background. And we did a few day trips out onto different islands, and then I'd come back and paint what I had experienced. And these works are now up in Queensland with a gallery up there. And then just to finish off, and just wanted to share with you a little bit about the process of putting one of my paintings together. This commission here is it's commissioned by a family in Sydney, and it was about 3.5 metres long, and it was 2 canvases, and there was 2 daughters, and they got to choose what people and friends were to go into each of their canvases. So they had a dog each, and then all their friends, and each friend, we had to closely match the hair colouring and the clothes that the girls wanted. So it was a bit of fun doing. It's now hanging in their playroom in Sydney, and in fact the family called in to see me last week to say hi, and I asked the girls if their friends were still the same, and in actual fact no, they've all changed, but they love their painting. So thank you for joining me today, and please enjoy this presentation.